everybody, welcome back. In today's Train at Home video, I'm going to describe my method that I use to break a kata down so that I can train it at home or when I have less space or a more confined area. The method that I normally use is to break a kata down into sections or chunks. And I will practice each section individually. And how I determine where to break that kata down into sections is, generally speaking, a directional change. When we change directions from the beginning point of that technique to the directional change is how I break it down. And today I'm going to use a kihon or a basic kata. And the reason for that is so that it doesn't matter what style that you practice. Whether you're Shotokan or Goju-ryu or Shito-ryu or any other style, almost every style has a basic kata. And you can use the things in this kata or your basic kata and apply them to your other competition kata. So I didn't want to use one that maybe another style doesn't have. So in this kihon kata, I'm going to demonstrate the initial moves, where the directional changes are, and the other thing that I will do is I will often work on just the transition itself, because you'll find that those transitions can often show up in all of your other kata. So we're going to get to that right now. All right, so what I have here is I taped off a section of approximately 6 feet by 6 feet, just shy of 2 meters by 2 meters. And this is actually smaller than I have up in the hallway upstairs where I've done my other Train at Home video series. But I wanted to show that even here in this small space, you can still get a lot of good quality work done. Okay, so the other factor to consider is that sometimes in your small spaces, you don't have the room to complete the techniques as they are demonstrated in the kata completely. For example, in this small space, as you can see here, I don't even have enough room to do the full step to the block without running into an obstacle. In this case, it's a railing so I can punch through, but if that was a solid wall, I wouldn't have any place to put my hands. So one technique that I use is to, instead of stepping through, is to switch feet. And by what I mean by that, switching feet, is instead of stepping off this front leg and stepping through into the full stance, I will pull this front foot back and step, and then I can do the kata in place. Okay, so this looks more, if I'm going to this side so you can see, so when I step, I pull my foot back and then I step through. Okay, moving forward from the front, many kata have where you move forward in multiple steps. So from here, I will get my stance, I will pull back, and then I will step forward. Pull back and step forward. So for example, in my kihon kata, where I block or I step forward and I change directions, now I would punch 1, 2, 3, but if I did that in here, I would end up in the middle of the room. So from here, I pull back and I step. I pull back and I step. I pull back and I step as I punch. And you can see I'm in the same spot. So don't be afraid to change the kata a little bit in that you're altering how you step. You're not actually changing the moves or the techniques of the kata, but you're fitting it into your small area. Another factor is oftentimes we'll have repetitive movements in kata. For example, in this kihon kata, we punch, 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 right, left, right. Well, we can break that down into separate practice on its own and isolate those moves out of the kata itself. So if I'm just practicing kihon, I can just practice that kihon. I don't have to practice that as part of my kata per se. What that allows me to do is to shorten the length of my kata in one way so that I can get to the next transition, so I can practice that transition, which is harder to do than just the stepping and the punch by itself. Okay? Now, for this next section, I go to the left. Then I have an identical section to the right, but I want to practice the transition in between. And I will break that down and I will rep the transition itself 3, 4, 5 times, depending on, or more, depending on what I'm focusing on that day. Okay, so you see how in this small area right here, I was able to do the kata completely. I was able to break it down by focusing on the individual sections and focusing on the transitions and adjusting my footwork as necessary. And the key point that I want you to remember is you don't have to be in the dojo. You can practice your karate anywhere. You can practice your kata. You can practice your kihon anywhere, even in this small space. I could actually break it down into even half of that and still get a good quality workout by simply changing directions, by working on my transitions, by even working on one or two individual techniques at a time. And the key that I want you to remember is the goal is not to complete the kata or just do the kata. The goal is to improve the techniques within the kata. And sometimes that means making individual adjustments to not to the kata themselves, but how you do it based on the environment. Just like you would have to adjust individual techniques based on the environment that you would be out, that you would find yourself out in the real world or out in the real life if you had to apply these techniques. You would have to adjust your footwork or stances or whatnot as necessary to adapt to that environment. And we have to do the same thing here when we're practicing our kata at home. So this gives you an idea. You can apply these ideas to any kata, whether it's your basic, your regular kata, a competition kata, a beginning kata, an advanced kata, whatever kata it is, you can break it down into the following types of sections by focusing on where you change directions, breaking it down into those one or two or three individual techniques, focusing on your transitions, and adjusting your footwork as necessary. Now, you know what to do, so go get to work, and we'll see you out there.